Welcome back. In this video, I want to cover something called maps. Maps aren't really necessary to learn, but they are so useful in game development that I think they deserve their own video. So I'm going to create a new map. I'll create a variable called myMap, and I will give it some values, and I'll explain what these values are. So I'm going to give it a string. I'll do this symbol here and give it a value of 1. And then I'll do 2 and 3. This is a map. So maps are a type of collection, just like an array, but they contain key value pairs. So for example, if I want to trace something from this map, I'm going to trace my map. My map, we'll go with the square bracket, and we'll type in 1. So getting a value from this map is very similar to getting a value from an array. In an array, you would use an index from 0 up to the length of the array minus 1. I might actually type this a little differently to make it a little bit easier to understand. You can see that in the map, you have a key, which is 1, and a value that is associated with it. In this case, it's the number 1. And the same deal with 2 and 3. 2 is associated, the key of 2 is associated with the value of 2, the number 2. If you try to compile this code, you'll print out 1. So what this is doing is you are getting the value that is associated with the key of 1. So whatever is between these square brackets is going to be used as the key to access a specific value from the map. So I can use 3 instead of 1, and it will print out 3. Of course, you're not just limited to strings and numbers. I'll make the number the key and the string the value. So now that's flipped around, and instead of using a string as a key, I will use a number. So if I use the number of 2, I'll get the string 2 printed to the screen. So in this case, the number 2 is the key, and the string 2 is the value that you get from that key. So why would you use a map over an array? In some cases, it is way easier to get a value from a map than it is from an array. A good example of this would be weapon data. If you're storing like a weapon ID or something, I'll just write out this example. I'm going to create a map, and we'll say wooden sword is the key, and it has an ID of 45, I guess. And maybe the iron sword has a value of 69, nice. I can now trace weapons, and I can get the value stored at the wooden sword key. If you know that the weapon ID that you want is for the wooden sword in your game, it's much easier to set a key called wooden sword and then get the ID from that wooden sword key than it is to memorize some array index of where this wooden sword ID is. This also becomes more complicated when you're adding more weapons, because if you're using an array, it's possible that that array index will change. But in this case, a key in a map will never change. It'll always be called wooden sword. So that's just an example of where maps will be useful. I'm going to get rid of the weapons map, and I'm going to show you one more thing. Because a map is a collection, you can also use a loop on it. So I'm going to type in 4, and I'm going to say value in my map. And I'm just going to trace the value. And that will print out all the values in the map. But you'll notice there's something a little strange here. I've defined the map in the order 1, 2, 3, but the for loop printed out 3, 2, 1. A map doesn't actually know the order of the key value pairs that are stored inside the map. This is one place where you would use an array over a map. If you know that the items in your collection are going to be in the same order every single time, you should not use a map, because a map doesn't store the order of those items. Whereas with an array, the order is always going to be the same because it starts at 0 and just counts the numbers in order. Of course, if you're not interested in the values and you just want the keys from the map, you can also type in .keys, and you can loop over the keys instead of the values. And then you get 3, 2, 1, which are the keys instead of the values. That's pretty much it. Both arrays and maps are very, very useful in game development. So because I've already covered arrays previously, I thought maps deserve their own video, but maps are not at all necessary to make games, they're just very useful. So that's about it.